future trends, deep insights, industry leaders. This is the iGaming Next podcast with your host, Jesper Kärrbrink.
Hi, and welcome to another iGaming Next podcast. My name is Jesper Kärrbrink, and I have the great pleasure of having Henrik Tjärnström with me here today. Henrik is the CEO of Kindred. Welcome, Henrik.
Thank you very much, Jesper.
It's a pleasure having you here. And we should start with our surnames because we are both Swedish. And mine is pronounced Kärrbrink, and yours is pronounced Tjärnström. In English, what do you prefer to do? What are they saying?
Yeah, they're saying all sorts of things, and especially if you come to a meeting and they try to type it in after you said something, it's never correct. But Tjärnström is probably the closest we get.
That's good. Mine becomes as Kärrbrink, and I had this fantastic experience in an Indian hotel like 15 years ago, and he couldn't get my last name. He couldn't even start pronouncing it, and it became a bit awkward for him. But I told it's okay, whatever you say. But that's good. We have too many dots of our vocals. That's the problem here. But in this today, we're going to be Kärrbrink and Tjärnström if we need to use our surnames.
That's good.
And Henrik, I know that all successful CEOs are, and rightly so, are downplaying the roles when it comes to the development and the success of the company. But at the same time, it's very interesting to know who the person is that is on top of the ship, so to speak. So could we start with just a short, brief summary of who is Henrik Tjärnström?
Yeah, no, as you say, I'm very fortunate to be surrounded with so many good people, and I think that's been a benefit for us at Kindred throughout our history, that we have the pleasure of having sort of the best people around, and working together we have been able to create what we have done over the years. And I think that's something I just want to start with. But for me, it's I come from a Swedish background, as you say. I've worked both in construction company and with Skanska, the big Swedish one, but both in Sweden, but also internationally in London and in the UK. And that's actually when I was working for Skanska in the UK in 2003 that I got in contact with what is Kindred today, or Unibet back then. I also know Anders, the founder of Unibet back in the days. We know each other and we're best friends. So that's also part of the story. But when I joined the board back in 2003, it was as a non-executive director when I was working for Skanska in project finance, and that was an important part for the company. At that time was relatively small, 30-40 people, and pre-IPO and everything. So it was in its infancy in many ways, albeit that it was 3 years into its existence. And then I was a non-executive director between 2003 and 2008 when I was sort of asked to step in on a temporary basis on the CFO position in the company, working then together with Petter Nylander, as was CEO back then. And then when Petter wanted to move back to Sweden after 5 years within the company, I was sort of asked by the board if I wanted to take over in the company and become the CEO. And that was, of course, an extreme challenge, but also something I was really keen on taking on and trying and seeing. And having worked 2.5 years together with Petter very closely and with a very good cooperation, I felt that I had a good opportunity. But we were for sure facing some challenges back then. But we've been successful by having a good team, as I said, and we're here. We are today.
Indeed, you have. And I don't think anyone regret that the move you made there. But at the same time, it's quite a move from construction to gaming. It's one of the furthest I've heard about. But this also shows that leadership is much more than knowing the industry. It's as you say, it's building good teams and good people. So basically, you could come from any industry, couldn't you, and go to another industry?
I think so. It's of course you have to be sort of interested in the products, and gambling has been close to me for throughout, in a sense. So it's nothing new in that sense. And I was, but clearly, I think what is applicable from what I worked with within Skanska was kind of really big projects and stuff. And as you know from your work life as well, Jesper, it's a lot about business, it's about projects and managing and sort of working together, and it's together we create results. And I think that kind of knowledge and experience has been very valuable in Unibet and Kindred.
I agree to 100%, but I think you said something very important there. You have to love the product, and this is where I never applied for a job as in a leadership job for an insurance company or something like that, because there's no fun in it. Or it might be, but I can't find it. But you're right. You have to love the product, and if you love the product, you can basically jump into any industry as being a leader. But it's the love that comes through, and I will come back to that. But first, the Kindred story. For me, it started when I was at Svenska Spel, and Kindred and Petter was the kind of one of the enemies that I was fighting every day, and it also, that fight changed and turned the Swedish gambling market. It took 10 years, but still, that was the start of the deregulation process and so forth. At that time, Unibet for me was a bit of a bad guy, but at the same time, I had a lot of respect for you, and since then you've grown to become a role model actually for a lot of iGaming companies. You are in the forefront of responsible gaming and other things. Could you just comment on that transition? It in your opinion, it might have not been a transition, but in my view, it's been a very, very strong transition from being one of the early kind of bad guys, if I call it that, to being what you are today, a very well-reputed iGaming company.
No, and back then, when you sort of joined Svenska Spel as well, and I was more closely involved in Kindred than or Unibet as a CFO, and we were also a bit, I would say, intimidated by what you did back then as well in Svenska Spel by changing things in its foundation, in a sense, and approaching things in a different way. And that was, I guess, creating some unpredictability. And I guess that's what you kind of perhaps saw in Unibet at the time as well, that it was, what is this? What is going to take shape in, and how is it going to develop, in a sense? And I think for us, that's it's always been about in our DNA that it's about sort of challenging the status quo and really looking at what kind of new technology is delivering as an opportunity for approaching things in a different way and be able to offer a customer a better experience. Of course, as you were back then in Svenska Spel, where you were restricted by the regulations that you had to operate within, and we had more freedom to operate from .com. With be able to offer better prices and more appealing product for the customers, and of course that is a big starting point benefit for us that we had back then. But we always had the customer at heart, and that's really what we have, and also challenging the legacy structures in society. And I think that goes for more business sectors than just gambling, in a sense. You see that today with digitalization that is sort of spreading across society, and it is giving customers a completely new way of approaching things, and also companies, of course, as well. And that's what we have always tried to utilize, that thinking, what can we do in the kind of best interest for the customer? How can we change things and also challenge the legacy structures? And as you say, that's where we came from back then, with sort of innovation in technology and all those good stuff, and sort of challenge what we're doing. But I think it's, as you say, things have changed a lot over those last 10, 12 years as well. Now it is more of a closer cooperation between, it's more about the operators who want to take responsibility and be within the system together, and creating the best possible system for sort of giving the customers no reason to be outside that system. But I think it's a big step that we have done now. For example, I was part of the Svenska Spel seminar the other week as well, together with Patrick Hoffbauer, and we share very common views when it comes to responsible gambling and player safety and all those things. So I think it started with that more challenger mentality, and I think that's what it had to be back then, to really trying to get the sort of attention, and also to be able to sort of get our message through. But gradually over the years, and especially since 2010-11, we have been focusing a lot about going for locally regulated licenses and work from within the system together with the former incumbents. And it's actually nowadays, it's the former incumbents and us are together against what is the black market today. And that will always be there. It's only one click away for the customers, and that's our biggest challenge. But there we have come far as between operators, but also to some extent with regulators. But the politicians, it's still a bit of an unknown quantity in that we need to constantly sort of educate on the topic.
Yes. No, we're coming back to both these topics, both the regulation and the responsible gambling. But it's so clear that you have kind of moved into this direction where you are part of the establishment, so to speak, and really wanted to be on the inside of the regulated market. And for me, that's impressive, because you're not really started like that, in my opinion, but you're now. So that's really cool. But another thing I want to connect back to is the culture, because it's always been by the player for the player, and it seems that you're kind of keeping that within the company, even though you are so much bigger today, you have so many more brands today, you're in so many more markets today, but it feels like you kept the core of the culture in the company. And also meeting people from working at Kindred, they're always happy with working with Kindred, and even more so, and perhaps not surprising, but even more impressive is that people that left Kindred and started going elsewhere also are very positive of their time. You don't really find any people bad-mouthing the former employer, and that's interesting. And what's the recipe for this? You kept it like I shouldn't say a family, but still it's a very strong Kindred or Unibet Kindred feeling in the company or around the company.
That's something we worked, of course, very hard to try to keep, and in some ways it comes by itself, in a sense, I think, with who we are and what we have become, in a sense. And as you know, we started with Unibet, and as you say, that by players for players has been the tagline for the Unibet brand since very early, I would say probably 2003 or something like that. And that's been something that we have sort of challenged from time to time and see if we would change that, but we've sort of reverted back to that for the Unibet brand, that it is still very important, and it still adds a lot of value, in a sense, also from a trust and loyalty from the customer's point of view. So for the Unibet brand, sort of by players for players has remained, albeit that it's sort of changed to some extent. But for the other brands, of course, we have different identities as well. But for the group, we did a big work throughout the sort of 2015-16 when we rebranded the holding company to Kindred. And that has been sort of important to carry those kind of legacy sort of cultures and behaviors into Kindred. And as you know, one of the core values we have at Kindred is sort of we believe in friendship, and we build on trust, and we dare to challenge, and we seek to innovate, and we're individuals united. Those are kind of the core principles that we work with, and we did a very extensive work there in 16 to trying to embed those. And even though we, as you say, we have quite a lot of new people coming into the organization, it's we've been successful in keeping that culture, and it's also, I think, good that we've been able to show that if you come from underneath in the company, you can go all the way up to the top as well. Like, in a sense, I came from a little bit of a different background, and we have other executive team members like Britt Boskov, who was a trainee in the company starting in 2004 and has been part of the exec team since 2006 or 7 or so. So it is. We want to create that sort of as flat structure as possible, and with the minimal sort of internal politics and nonsense, but working sort of with the customer in focus and working together as a team, and really knowing that it's together we can achieve those things.
Fantastic. I think we got the summary of a management book here in 15 seconds. That's the essence of a good leadership in my book. And that change from the branding changing from Unibet to Kindred, you had to do it because you were growing so big and having all these brands and companies. But how difficult was it from a scale from 1 to 10? I mean, operational, doing all this and getting the people, and how scared was you that this was the wrong move, or sorry, this was not the wrong move, but how scared were you that you wouldn't execute good enough to kind of lost opportunity?
No, change is always a challenge, but I think it's also a great opportunity in a sense. We were perhaps from the outside in, we're kind of living in sort of in perfect harmony and everything. But as you say, when we decided to go more from a single brand that historically was Unibet, by buying Maria Bingo, as it was called back in 2007, sort of started that sort of multi-brand journey for us. And by going from single to dual, and then when we added more brands onto that, it became a challenge internally to people who were working in other brands than Unibet, that when we were talking publicly, we were saying Unibet and we meant the Unibet Group, but people could feel internally that we were focusing on the Unibet brand. So for us, it was a natural evolution in a sense that we decided to change the name of the holding company and where everyone is employed, and then we have customer-facing brands underneath that. So we created a holding company for gambling-related assets, and it was a lot of hard work, but it was worth it, and it's been a big part of our success since then. I could say that we have sort of the employment company and the sort of the corporate identities is sort of Kindred, and then we have the customer-facing brands that are underneath that, and it's been good for us. It's also interesting to see that some of our competitors have sort of copied across and done exactly the same journey. So it seems like we have done something right.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't have done it perhaps if you failed, but you did, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But these things are difficult, and I know I'm impressed. You put it through, and it's a large company as well. So these things are difficult. There's a lot of people involved, and then we have to touch the base on it. It's basically impossible not to, and of course, the last year with management remotely and during the pandemic, has this impacted your way of working as a manager and as a leader? And how do you see this will change now when people are getting? I got my first vaccine shot here a week and a half ago, and this will change. And what's your view on this?
Yeah, no, it of course has been a major change during the last year, but we have to start with sort of I have to start with sending my appreciation to the team that sort of really made this possible across the globe. That we were kind of, as anyone else, was fumbling in the dark in the beginning there and seeing what will this change. But fortunately enough for us, we are a digital company at heart and core, and we have transformed over the years to be able to what then wasn't aimed for this situation, but it helped us for sure in this situation. It's been part of my thinking that we if we want to attract the best talent in the company, which we of course need to do, and I'm convinced that the ones who have the best talent will be the one that have the best possibility. But doing that, we also need to allow people to be in a little bit different places perhaps than traditionally. Is sort of keeping everyone under one roof is providing efficiency in certain ways, but it's not the best for creativity and sort of getting all the right people on board. So by having that ability to work, we were set up in an efficient way that sort of helped us in this situation as well. And when we had to sort of take the decision as sort of a responsible corporate citizens to sort of allow people to work from home and seeing how that, we didn't see any impact really in the operations of the business. From a tech point of view, in certain areas where kind of getting access to data centers and stuff, when we have to go through third parties now rather than be able to do it ourselves, it's a bit of a hassle. But in a lot of different ways, we were able to just continue the way it was, and that's clearly been extremely fortunate. And when we see releases on our platform, we did over 12,000 releases on the platform last year, and we haven't sort of experienced any sort of challenge. But of course, as you say, building the culture and keeping the culture for the long term, it's a challenge with the current situation or the way it's been. So in that sense, I'm really looking forward to when we can go back to some sort of normality, and I think that will be important for the long term. But so far so good, and we'll see when things can start to normalize.
No, but this is interesting because I've seen the same operational. Basically, the entire iGaming industry was very fast on moving and shifting their servers or workstations, and customer service could work from home, etc., etc. But the challenge long term, as you say, is probably the leadership and the culture, because the culture, whatever you say, it starts on the top and kind of filters down. And when you can't meet people, you really can't speak to them in the way that you used to. This could have an impact over time that we can see in a year or two. So this is something I think we all have to work pretty hard with in getting that back. And of course, meeting people again will make it much more easier. And now I think it's one of my favorite topics. So we talk a lot about it at least, and we all been involved in it, and that's responsible gaming. And for me, responsible gaming is a business decision. It's about building a sustainable business and keep your customers. And I still want to say, you might disagree with me here, but we were quite early on this one with Svenska Spel, and we implemented this as Mr. Green as well. But I think, looking at this at the large, we did a lot of things, both these companies. But I think you have had one of the broadest approach to responsible gaming when it comes to how you invested in it and how you built it in. But my question here is this part of your customer strategy, or is this part of your CSR strategy?
It's a fundamental pillar in our strategy overall as a company, and it's been like that for many years. And that's, sorry, I'll just drink a little water here.
Yeah, please, I do the same.
No, but it's been an important part of our strategy and thinking and way of working for many years, and it's at the core of what we do. And we really, as I said, we build on trust, and that's not only trust between us as individuals within the company, but also between us and the customers. And you know, we've had a sort of a principle that we want to have a lifelong relationship with our customers, taking part of their entertainment budget for life. But it should be just that. It should be the entertainment budget, and it should be for fun and what people can afford to play for. So that's where we sort of come from, and that's how we want it to be. And we have invested very early, and we for me, I've seen this since basically 2010, 11, when we were going for these local licenses in the respective markets, and we were starting to roll out that strategy. And also when we saw the tightening regulations coming across Europe and now spreading to US and Australia and other places, that this is a key topic for everyone, and the one who takes care of the customer in the best way possible will be kind of the one that's best opportunity. And we have embedded that into our culture and how we work, and we're actually very pleased that we can say hand on heart that we see a business value from working in this area and focusing on this as much as we do. And I think that's where it has to start, in a sense that you have that in the kind of DNA of the organization to really focus on this. And there is of course, as you know, 98% of the adult population enjoy gambling, but 2% are in the risk zone, and those are 2% that we work very hard to try to get to have a healthy relationship with gambling, and it's individuals behind all these kind of numbers as well. So that's also very important, that no one wants to neither work for a company that's creating problems for their fellow citizens or really have those situations in your family either, in a sense. So it's a core of what we do, and we really invest a lot in it, and we will continue to do so as well.
Good, I like it. And no, you've done a fantastic job there, and for me, it's also one of the things that makes this industry so interesting. It's a kind of an intellectual challenge to balance the selling and the non-selling, and that's why we were doing these tools to kind of try to find the people that shouldn't buy the product that much, and at the same time that we are trying to develop a product that people really wants to enjoy and use and stay for a long time. And this balance is what makes this industry so challenging. And you wouldn't find it in construction. You would probably find other challenges there, but not this one. Yeah. And you also launched the Zero Vision, and I like that a lot. I mean, I love the concept. It's bold, but it's also a bit risky in the sense, because I mean, my first question is it theoretical possible to have a zero vision? Because we know that 2% of the population are predestinated to gamble or overconsume our products, and is that, and so what's your view on this?
Yeah, as I said, it's in this kind of if you put it like 60% of the adult population is gambling, and 98% of those 60% are doing it for fun and more of a social aspect, and 2% is in the risk zone, and about 0.5% of the 100% is sort of a pathological gamblers, yeah, and those are the ones that should not gamble in the first place. And clearly a lot of the benefits of the locally regulated systems with the common self-exclusion registers and everything is a big step in the right direction, but it's not enough in a sense. And for us, as I say, there are individuals behind these numbers, and creating tragedies for themselves and their families. And just want to make it clear that for us, it's crystal clear that we don't want to have problem gamblers on our platform. That's a starting point. And we've seen so many misconceptions and myths being spread, and numbers being bounced around about how much of the revenues are coming from these problem gamblers. And we've seen on our own numbers that those numbers are absolutely not correct. So, but of course, for us, when we set this vision out already in 2018, we had this close discussion internally and sort of really defined the situation, and we felt that we clearly cannot come out with anything but the zero vision. I mean, we cannot have an ambition that we will be satisfied if not everyone is taken care of, and that's why we've had this vision about 0% of revenues coming from harmful gambling in 2023. And of course, we will do whatever we can to get as close as possible to that target, but it needs cooperation as well, as you know, from both regulators, other operators, authorities, and politicians as well on how we can approach this common problem or the joint problem that we all have within the sector. But I'm very convinced that we can get very close to it ourselves, or we can get close to it ourselves. But the more cooperation and the better the system allows for channelization and everything, the easier it will be for us, but also then for everyone else in the industry as well to get closer to that number. Because with today's technology and data processing power and artificial intelligence, and if we can use technology for good, we are convinced that we are very much part of the solution and not the problem here. And it's by having a sustainable regulation that creates that opportunity for everyone.
No, I totally agree. And once again, I love the ambition of a zero vision. It's a statement, and it's a strong statement. And unfortunately, I hear there are I've spoken to some people about this, and they say, yeah, but it's impossible because if you have to do it, you have to do false positives and so forth. And I kind of, yes, you have to. Otherwise, it will never work. And better to tell someone that actually is green that, sorry, we thought you were red, and my bad, sorry, but you are green. And I assume that you have, when we built these, both at Svenska Spel and Mr. Green, false positives was part of the equation. And I assume you have the same. That can't be an argument not to do it. That should rather be an argument to do it, because these players will feel that, okay, wow, they take care of me. They thought I was, but I wasn't. Some will, of course, be a bit pissed, but some will actually take this as a protective measurement. Or what's your view on that?
No, clearly we work hard and we have developed our systems in a very good way, and that is clearly where it starts. But we're also to be humble and say that we will never be 100%, and we have to work with that as an ambition to get as close as possible. But as you say, the systems that we have built, and now with the upgraded version of the player safety or the detection system that we have now, 2.0, which is built on behavioral science metrics and data points, converting those into data points, and then looking into our customer data and trying to identify and flag up potential customers, as you say. And of course, sometimes it might be that the customer is a sort of a false positive, as you say, but that's just part of it. And that's why we have experts that overseeing these data flows and these flagging up of customers, and they make a sort of an active contact with the customer, and then it's their expertise and their judgments who can tell how we can sort of guide this customer in the best way possible. Because for us, it's not about identifying sort of and closing off. If that's needed, of course, we will do that. But it's more about, can we make this customer have a healthier relationship to gambling and gamble within control, and moving that customer from a high risk into a medium or a low risk customer. That is the core of what we try to do here. So, but it is a complex situation, but we feel that we, like you did as well, we have to do our best to try to get as close as possible.
Good. And I still, even though I'm not on an operator side anymore, I'm still thinking a lot about this one. And I'm coming down to affordability checks. In theory, if I only could spend what I can afford, then this problem would have been gone, so to speak. If I can afford to spend 1,000 euros a month and I spend 900, then it's not the problem. But if I go above that, then it's when the problem starts. So, do you think we will have technical solutions for this going forward? Will we find it? I mean, Sweden, it's an open society. We have bank ID. We have direct transfer, direct access to the tax authorities and numbers, etc., etc. Wouldn't it be possible to do pretty decent affordability checks, and by that kind of already from the start seeing that this person is probably gambling for more than he could afford or she could afford? Will that be going forward?
Yeah, as you say, in countries where that is possible, you have a better sort of 360 view of the customer, and that is sort of a big part of it. But as you know, also in most countries, the same data is not readily available, and that's where the sort of challenges start. But I think it's worth looking at it and starting from the point of view of the customer. And as you say, it's a very individual. It has to be individual based and yes, going more or less customer by customer, because no customer is the other alike in a sense. And it's about, exactly as you say, what can a certain customer afford to play for, and that varies across. And that's why these blanket levels that we see sometimes being talked about and some companies implementing, they are completely blunt in the case, because those levels, you can rest assured, is going to be way too much for quite a few people, and it's going to be way too little for others, and you just run the risk then in a sense of pushing customers to the black market. And that's unfortunately in a sense with these deposit limits that we've seen in Sweden as well, that that's exactly what's happening there, that rather than having customers within one operator and being able to see the customer in a better way, if their limit is put on 5,000 Swedish per week, then and if it's 100 operators licensed, you can gamble away 500,000 anyway every week without being breach of the system. Yeah. And then the different operators can't see the system across, and that's again why the cooperation comes in as well. So affordability is
and the role of the regulator. Sorry, and the role of the regulator. Yeah. I mean, if you have affordability check, that has to be on the center level. So I can afford 2,000 euros a month or whatever, but then I can't afford it with 10 operators, as you're saying. I can afford it. That's my total gambling. So you're absolutely right there. And will this happen? Are the regulators, you speak to them more than I do these days, are they adaptive to this? Are they responsive?
Yeah, they are, and I think the affordability levels are important, but it has also to be on kind of net deposits in a sense, rather than just we are very similar to banks, as you know, these days with the regulations and the financial systems that we operate. So we're very close, and the regulation has been drifting in the direction of financial institutions, which I think is good, because it's good for the customer in the end of the day. But it's also about kind of what is technically possible as well. And as you say, some of these measures doesn't seem to be based on facts and without looking at the consequences. Because when we started talking about our road to zero and publishing these numbers, when there was an interview with one of the Gambler Anonymous organizations here in Sweden, and they said that even though Spelpaus is there is 70% of their contacts they're getting is registered already on Spelpaus, which is the common self-exclusion register. So it's clear that is one important tool, but it's not the only one. And by having these deposit limits set, then it pushes customers onto so many different operators, which makes it virtually impossible for everyone to keep control of the customers that really need that control. So I think it's an important part of it, the affordability checks, but it's just one element, and again, it has to be individually based.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And back to the Swedish topic with the deposit limits, and deposit is probably the worst you can use, because it's not how much money I have in my wallet when I go into the restaurant. It's how much I spent in that restaurant that is the problem. And it's the same with gambling. It's not how much I deposit, because I deposit and withdraw, deposit and withdraw. It's about how much I lose, and that should be the limit. And we have that data. So, I mean, I think we agree on this one.
But there's one important thing here, Jesper, as well, worth mentioning, is about the kind of the whole value chain of the financial ecosystem that the customers and we live in as well. I mean, we have a closed loop within our customers, so that the customer deposits with one account and the money goes back into the same, and that provides a high security. But how did the customer get the money in the first place? When you look at sort of mobile loans or blanco loans and things like that, this is a bigger topic to that, in a sense, than just gambling. We of course have our responsibility to do, but it's also from a politician's point of view to look at if a vulnerable customer have been playing for too much money, where did they get the money from in the first place? And that's where it's also important to highlight the other parts of that.
Exactly, because they play for more than they can afford, which means they have borrowed it, they stolen it, they done something to get that money. So you are right. We have to look at the broader perspective. And this is not only gambling. This is probably heading into gaming as well. We see that the microtransaction market this year is estimated to be $100 billion, and there are no checks whatsoever. We heard an interview with Pierre here, who you could easily burn like 90,000 euros on microtransactions playing these games on your phone. So I think iGaming will be kind of a role model, hopefully, going forward for also for other industries, and we will see more and more of these getting regulated, because it's as easy to lose your money there as it is in our industry. And also, just to close this one, I think it's a bit unfair not unfair, but this industry has never done more than we have today. I think we should remember that there's a lot of things to do. Not everyone is as in the forefront as you are, but at the same time, the industry, this topic has never been so discussed and so implemented into strategies. So I think we have. I hope you agree with me. I think we have it's looking good in the future, at least.
We're making huge progress.
Yeah, good. And to something totally different. And a very hot topic these days, and that is blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So more on the philosophical level, this is I had a debate over the weekend with some friends, and there are clearly two paths. One is saying this is totally ridiculous, this will never work, this is humbug, etc., etc. And the other group or part was kind of, no, but what's the difference between this and your money you have on your account? It's still digital. It's you don't have that value reserved somewhere, and basically it's, if people believe in it, then it will exist. So what's your view on this and iGaming? Will we see more and more? I mean, blockchain is one thing that probably could be used in paid protection and so forth, but more cryptocurrency. What's your view on this coming to the industry?
Yeah, no, and I'm again first to admit that I'm not an expert in the field, but we've clearly followed the developments and have been doing for many years. We sort of looked at this quite closely and seeing it. But as I said, also when it comes to there's the certain benefits for sure about it, and also as you say more with around the technology and how that can be used and elements of crypto in sort of our payment solutions structure as well. But there's also of course the AML and the those kind of topics as well that is featuring high on the agenda. So when regulations has been increasing throughout the last couple of years, that's putting further and further pressure on the industry as well to make sure that like you say with affordability and AML and all those topics that what is the source of funds and where does the money come from and those kind of things and that's still making it easier in the kind of the fiat currencies to sort of look at things in that way rather than crypto. But I think it's also one of those things, as you know, with AR, sort of we had sort of virtual reality, the VR and AR was sort of talked about a lot and that would be implemented into our games about 3-4 years ago as well. And I think crypto was also high on the agenda then. And I think these things will take shape and it will be part of the experience, but we're still not completely there, I would say, to do that. But of course, we're following developments very closely.
Good. I agree. This is still early. Blockchain technology that will be used in different ways, and I think at least. And cryptocurrency, we have casinos doing cryptocurrencies. They're doing very well. It works. They live in a very volatile world, etc. So for more of a long-term strategy, it might be wise to wait a bit, but still. Yeah, virtual reality. Yeah, when the hardware looks like my glasses now, then I think it will break through heavily, and it might be the same with crypto. When enough people believes in it and start to use it, we have to use it as well in the industry. But it's an interesting topic, and I think your advice is very very clever here. We should follow this carefully and closely. Good. Another trend that I see, and I talk a lot about, is consolidation. The bigger get bigger and the smaller get smaller. Is this something that we will continue to see? Or is this just a hype right now when stock prices are quite high and the transactions are quite easy to do?
I think consolidation has been around in our sector since inception as well. It is sort of where we have done about one transaction per year for the last 15 years, and so we played our part in that as well. And of course, the additions that we've got from the consolidation has been really important for us to get new people on board and new businesses and widen our footprint and new technologies, etc. But fundamentally for us, it's been having a strong organic growth that's been the sort of the core. The sort of fundament that we build on, and then we can add strategic acquisitions on top of that. It's been really complementing the strong organic growth. So, but at the same time, of course, we've seen and we notice what's happening around us as well, and we see that size is important and scale is important, and we see that some of the bigger ones are sort of getting together and creating even bigger companies, and I think that's natural in a sense that you say that you get that benefit from scale. Now we are kind of number 4 operator globally, and we believe that we have the scale that we need to have a successful sort of independent future as well. But of course we're also looking at the sort of potential acquisitions and deal flow as well. And as you say, consolidation will continue, but at the same time, I think it's fair to say that there's going to be new companies coming up as well that you feel like this is too late to start anything new, but there's a lot of ambitious people out there, and if they can come up with a new angle, they can break through all the way up as well. So I think that's the beauty of the kind of the sector as well, that you, if you do things right and you have your angle on it, and then you can sort of be successful anyway. But of course, scale will be important also to have the ability to invest in these other important areas.
Cool. I agree. I mean, this is a business where scale really matters, and we coming from oligopols, state-owned monopolies, where the pool size was kind of the success of those companies. So it's kind of in the history of the industry. But you at the same time, you're very, very right. We have some disruptor being born right now that we don't really know about, or perhaps we know about them, but we haven't seen them yet. Because when an industry is peaking, and I'm not saying it's peaking, but it's reached a very, very high level from just the last 10, 15 years. That's normally when the disruptors are entering the markets. I'm having my eyes open here for them. It will happen most likely.
But you can also see that even though we, as you say, there's a consolidation within the industry, it's a relatively small part of all gambling that's taking place online today anyway. So that's also clearly a big growth driver for the sector, that the conversion is still in its infancy in a sense from offline to online, albeit that it's been ongoing for 20 years now.
No, you're right. We have I normally say, and this is just me man guessing, but I say that we have an underlying growth of 7 to 8 to 10% just of converting from bricks and mortar to online. And on that note, you're entering US, where we have the big brick and mortars realizing this now and starting to transform and acquiring companies to get online. So yes, I soon going to leave you. I know that you have other meetings to attend to, but it would be interesting to listen about a bit about your US strategy. What advantages do you have as one of the pioneers in iGaming when you enter a virgin market like the US?
No, as you say, we've been looking at the US for a long time. We actually, basically since inception, we always choose not to take US business, which was a very sound decision back then. And when the UEGA kicked in 2006, we didn't feel anything from that because we were unaffected, but others were losing quite a lot at the time. So I think that was the first step. And then in 2012-13, we looked at New Jersey, then was opening up for casino online. And we looked at that very carefully and closely, and we still decided that it was too early for us at that time, and we wanted to see more about sports and what that would happen. But the PASPA was, of course, still in place. And when that got repealed in 2018, we had already taken a decision in 2017 that we would go into the US because we felt that it was getting to that time. But we have probably approached the US in a bit different way to most of our competitors, in a sense that we've clearly seen these kind of big pan-US partnerships being formed and announced, and that's not really in our DNA and way of working. And we've chosen more of a controlled expansion strategy for the US by trying to be selective, similar to what we have done in Europe and other places. And we're trying to do a careful analysis of the different states or countries on global level and seeing where would we have a good opportunity for profitable growth and be able to add value for our customers. And that's how we looked across the states in the US as well then back in 17-18, and we saw that even if it's going to be a bit more cumbersome for us to get market access in the different states, it will give us a better opportunity to have a clear and independent strategy and more optimal execution, and that's the basis that we have progressed on, and we have now the team on the ground has done a fantastic job. It's a team built up by seconded people from Europe, but also local expertise added to those European experts. So we bring our 20 plus years of experience from Europe to the US and complementing that with the local expertise of the team on the ground, and the team has secured now access to up to 12 states, which cover more than a third of the US population, and it's still before some of the bigger states are sort of clear what's going to happen there as well. So I think we have a very good position, but of course it is a competitive market, as you say, both the bricks and mortars, but also the usual suspects from Europe is of course there as well. But at the same time, we look at this as more of a marathon and a long-term sort of challenge, and taking step by step and looking at the long-term customer experience is what we believe will differentiate us from from most in the market. So it's about building the brand, but also investing in tandem with the brand and not investing too early. And so we're basically applying the experience and knowledge that we have from Europe, and we see that it works as well in the US.
With other words, a classic Henrik/Kindred approach. A strong strategy, yes, impressive execution, a marathon, and you do it a bit stealth, under the radar. It worked before, and I think it will work now. But once again, the competition there will of course be fierce. We see how FanDuel and some of the others basically are spending more money on advertising than they have in turnover, and of course that is it's a tough competition. We're gonna follow this one, but once again, you're following your strategy, and that has been successful in the past.
Yeah, and that's what we have done in the likes, as you say, with UK, Australia, and those markets as well. That we entered the UK in 2012, and it's now that we're sort of really starting to see important traction being made for us there. So as you say, we view it in that kind of perspective, that it's not going to be in 1 or 2 quarters. We're basically only a year and a half into the US venture, and it's an enormous potential, and we are confident that we have what it takes to get there. But of course, we need to put the building blocks in place as well to get there, and that's what we're doing right now.
But that's one of your signals. That's kind of the long-term approach, and you can afford to have that approach, being with the size and the position you have. I assume it's easy to be long-term when you are the number 4 in the world, and if you're number 433, then you become quite.
Yeah. No, we have such a good portfolio of markets, and as you say, that's what's helped us a lot. But of course, if you look at like Svenska Spel being a dominant force in the local market, they are bigger than us in certain ways for sure. But we have that portfolio market, so also being global. So by the European sort of footprint that we have, complemented by Australia and US, now we have a broad portfolio to utilize, so we can reallocate money from different markets into the focus markets of the moment where we're growing, and that helps us a lot.
Yeah, you can imagine the frustration some Svenska Spel CEOs has had, sitting on that position, having the international plan in the drawer and not be able to use it.
Yeah, I know what you talk about.
Yes. Okay, we're going to round up here. This has been a fantastic talk. Just on a philosophical level, iGaming in 5 years. How will this differ from today, and how will Kindred differ from today? 5 years.
5 years is a long time in our industry that's changing so fast as it is. But I would, the cautious prediction would be that we will see more of the same in a sense. I think we're still, as you say, with the migration from conversion from offline to online will continue, and it will be even more, and we will be able to offer a customer an even better and safer experience in 5 years' time. And what is today with sustainability will only increase. It will be only more important to take care of the customer in a better and better way, and also the hopefully will be in an even further progressed position when it comes to the cooperation between all stakeholders in society that is relevant, both governments, the politicians, the regulators, the operators, and the customers, media and sports, and everyone. We all have a common interest to create a good ecosystem where it's sort of a beneficial system that have staying power and have an improved channelization over time, rather than with a sort of deficient system that has a reducing channelization, which is bad for everyone in the system. So hopefully we've been able to get even further on that, and that we've sort of achieved our vision of 0% of revenues coming from harmful gambling by then, and hopefully that also goes across operators in the market as well, so that we are truly able to take care of the customer in the best way possible. So
yeah. Good, that's a good answer. I got the same question 8-9 years ago, and I was a bit more I was a bit more sure about my answer. I said, oh, well, it's going to be Svenska Spel, Unibet, Expect, and Ladbrokes, and then there's no room for any more casinos on the Swedish market.
Yeah, no, that's it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. No, that's good. Henrik, it's been a true pleasure having this discussion with you, and thanks a lot, and good luck.
Thank you very much, Jesper. It's been a pleasure having you or being part of it.
Good. See you. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.